and I'm an art conservation student here at the University of Delaware. I'm currently standing outside the Mechanical Hall Gallery, our contemporary African-American art museum here at UD. This semester has been an exciting one for the university museums with the implementation of a public program series called If Objects Could Talk, What Would Yours Say? This was organized around an exhibition entitled Hassinger Clark, Foxes, Combs, and Constellations. Let's go check it out! We invited the public to join us for 2 evenings of art, storytelling, and community. The idea of the program series was to bring together a diverse audience of local community members and UD students and faculty in an effort to connect visitors to the artwork and to one another. Visitors were asked to share their stories in response to the stories communicated by the exhibition. On October 3rd, 2013, we hosted Talking Shop, focusing on the work of Sonya Clark and inviting hair stories from visitors.
Even when you're looking at a static object, I mean, I hope that there's implied action in that object. So, and I think this is true of any made object, that you can feel the hands wrapping the thread around these manufactured combs. The combs might not feel like they have action themselves as manufactured objects, but the thread wrapping, I think, has implied action.
Tonight, we're focusing on the work of Sonya Clark. She is also a fiber artist, but of course she works on the other end of the fiber timeline. She works with the very first fiber, human hair. And in fact, she believes that there's a lot about us that is wrapped up in our hair. Of course, now we know through forensic technology and 20th century science that it's DNA and all these other things. But cultures, since there have been cultures, have felt that hair has a link to your ancestors, sometimes a link to your social status, your personality, and everything else. That's hairstyles, that's phenotype, and everything in between, loss of hair, and all those sorts of things have meanings in different cultures. So it's part of what motivates her to use hair, and of course combs, which she uses to manipulate hair, as well as thread as another sort of fiber, to weave together stories, interesting stories for you to decipher, if you will, by looking at her work.
Okay, so here in the picture, here's the angel. Here's the head of the angel. This is the wing stretched out. The other wing coming back. This is the chest of the body. And as you notice, the hair is bound here on the angel's head.
When I was in college, you know how you sit and you run your hands through your hair? Well, my hair, the ends of my hair were breaking off because I needed a haircut. So there were all these little pieces of hair on the paper. And I was doing intaglio printmaking at the time, and I decided to use those in the project. And it's not mainly made up of that, but you can see it in the final print kind of in the background.
I remember as a teenager going to, it was a big deal to go to the Dallas Students Training School in San Francisco. So we take the bus over, and we line up at the window, and then the trainers would all come out. And they'd all kind of look and say, no, yes, no, I want that. We were all scared of it. And then you could never say what you wanted. You would just come out with something really exciting. So sometimes it would be like here and down here, or the opposite. It was always something sort of.
It's a really little object, and I don't even know where she got it from. But it's the shape of a dinosaur. It's got upper teeth, lower teeth, kind of 2 different types of combs, I guess. I don't comb my hair a lot. It's not something that I think about, but I know a lot of times that I do. It's really one of the only combs I've owned, and I've never actually probably bought a comb other than this. And so it's just a really nice way for me to remember kind of where I came from. And it's such a small thing, and I usually, when I pull it out, if I pull it out of my book bag or whatever, people kind of make fun for it, because it's such like it almost looks like a child's toy. And at first people are like, what is that? I enjoy playing with it and kind of messing with people. And then I started, like, comb my hair or something with it, they were kind of laugh. But it's something that really connects me. Kind of to home.
Mine is who will come meet some and my mom and my sisters usually come with me
Even though I can dress myself, I don't know why. Like, I don't know. Something that we all do together.
I've been going to the same bar for 5 years now. So,
like 50 different drawings.
I would go listening and this time I was like, no. Like, I didn't realize how bad it was. And it's just like, I was completely shocked because I don't think we're going to really take the bar. So when we got started, I was cut my hair. First haircut, she's the only person I was allowed to touch her hair. I drove 65 miles from 2 weeks ago.
Except for clippers, and this object draw me to this image. This is an image that the artist has drawn, that Sonya Clark has drawn as a bird's eye view of her husband's head, so it's the top of his head. Of course, it's open interpretation. I see a fuzzy egg, I see all sorts of things. But this is actually the top of her husband's head. Now, my story is that I didn't necessarily grow up in a household with my father. Didn't know him too well. But when I was about 20 years old, or 22 years old, out of college, on my first business trip, I went to Chicago where he lived and tracked him down. And he needed a haircut and he shaved really badly. And I happened to have my clippers with me, as I always did. So I sat down with him and cut his hair. And as I was cutting his hair, standing above him, basically at this eye view, like I began to see myself emerge. Like as I cut it down and trimmed it and edged it up and made it look nice. In this guy I didn't know, I saw myself.
We all got together for a big family reunion, and so my uncles flew in from Thailand and my grandparents flew over from California. And this is in the 90s, so I was pretty young. Me and my cousin were the same age. And so for whatever reason, that year he decided he was going to dye his hair. And he's like my color and dark hair. He dyed it like bleach blonde. And so that was the year that we all got together and took family pictures. So now these family pictures are all over the world and they're just a great reminder of a really funny time.
But I saw like a woman when she was a basement and she was kind of wild. And I remember when I first started going to her, like, when I talked to her, so like, she said that after I've been going to her now for years now, she's kind of like, tells me everything about her life and it's really entertaining now. But like when I first started going to her, I was only like 14, I was just like sitting there quiet, and like now that I know her, it's funny.
When I was a sophomore in high school, I never really let my hair grow out too long. I always kept it kind of short, and I always thought it was straight. My hair was straight. So one day I was in my biotechnology classes, it was an elective, and they taught us how straight hair is actually flat, and curly hair is actually round in the microscope when you look at it in the microscope. So I took my hair and I put it in the microscope and I checked and I saw that you can really see the shape of my hair and that it was round. So I was like, that's weird. I thought my hair was straight, it can't be curly. So after a while I just let it grow out and I noticed that as it got longer the curls started coming in and I was like, that can't be.
So I have a picture. It's a super embarrassing picture, but whatever. So it's when I was like 8, and this was the first time that like I got to choose how my hair was, because when I was younger I had it cut like really short and we had blunt bangs, and my grandma always cut them, and they were always like crazy uneven because she had like shaking hands, and I finally got like the freedom. And so I started growing it out, and it was always this crazy length thing, and I didn't really know how to take care of it, and like, I still have long hair, and it's still a decision that I make, and it like stuck with me. I recently got a haircut that was like shorter than I expected it to be, it like emotionally traumatized me.
And then I decided that this summer I was going to cut it really short. Again, the week before I went to the big presentation. And I think that I realized something about myself. I don't know what it says about me, but I didn't tell anybody. And I kind of just really enjoyed seeing people's reactions to having all of my hair chopped off. Because I got some really, so since I didn't tell anybody, nobody was expecting it, but I came home and had really short hair. But I got some fun.
And now, like, everything.
When I was like in elementary school, I didn't like to know where to come out. my hair, do my hair. And my grandmother always did my hair in the morning for me. So one night I took the scissors and just cut off my hair. And then when I get up in the morning, I grab something on my head until I go to school and I take it off. And that's why I started, I think it's 71, I started working with other people here, because I couldn't stand nobody working my head. They just say, it hurt my head, I was doing this. I said, I couldn't stand this, I got to do someone else's hair. So I think that's why I started working with them. Everybody would come to me to cut their hair, because I guess the way this month is on mine, they made my head hurt.
You know, it's kind of like tied to my stories of moving, stories from electricity, stories without electricity. And now, like, everything in the United States, everything is available, right? And my objects actually kind of like linked to the change in my life, because I don't know if you've seen the commercials of the pro-life styler, right? Yeah. Of, you know, you cut your hair different, you know. Obviously, I don't cut this hair with this, but I have clippers for that. But this kind of reminds me of how much I have changed throughout time. You know, before in other words, I was like, whatever is available. You know, my mom's, you know, terrible, but that's what I have. And then when I got electricity, the guy in in town who cut the hair was like the only thing we got. And then when I moved here, like, I have a lot of options, you know. And just today I was thinking, what should I bring, you know? And I read here and I was like, styling. I was like, it's a lot about styles nowadays, you know. And I think that kind of shows differences in life from this country to my country. Because in my country it's like whatever you got. And here it's like you got options, you got different things, and you got this fancy stuff that you don't even need to plug it in. And you're like,
I cannot believe that there is such a thing. But this is Ultra Swim Chlorine Removal Shampoo. And I am a swimmer. And I think the whole idea that there would be a formulation of shampoo so particular for swimmers. The other thing that I wondered about this is you don't see it everywhere. But I bought it in a mountain Rite Aid in a small mountain town where there isn't a swimming pool within miles and where most people are skiers, not swimmers. So why on earth that particular Rite Aid stocked this kind of shampoo? I have no idea. But I like the idea that there is something directly for swimmers. I think it says something about our consumer culture that we do.
Say prom cone or two different proms with two different guys.
On October 17, 2013, we hosted Making Do, focusing on the work of Maren Hassinger and inviting upcycling stories from visitors.
And so I started thinking about all the stuff that we do that has to do with boxes. We live in boxes, we eat from boxes, we behave in very, grid-like fashion. Everything we do is kind of enclosed. And so this is a meditation on that enclosure and how we should probably think about getting out of that, because getting out of the box means fresh air, fresh thought, fresh ideas, changes, positive, negative, whatever, changes, so that we can prosper as people.
So the very first gallery, if you walk into, all of the recyclable containers, all of the food cartons and things are two installations put together by artist Maren Hassinger, who does in this case consider herself a fiber artist. Of course, she's working with a very 21st century definition of fiber. And of course, she's repurposed things that would normally be trash or recycled materials. She's given them new life at this exhibition.
Person, but I'm gonna take a water bottle and then I'm gonna put a cape on it and make it into a superhero. That's fine. It's as good as you're gonna get out of it.
It reminds me of my mother had the gallstones removed. And they were quite large and there were a lot of them. And she took them down to the local jeweler and said, could you put some gold plate on them? And then she macrame this beautiful necklace of gold.
It doesn't 100% belong to me, but I thought it was very appropriate for today. And it's actually, you know how most people have old books that they read and then they collect dust in the corner. So it's an old book that was repurposed into something new. And you can, it sits on a desk and exactly, no room can go in.
But I still saved my cash until, I'm gonna say, I was made aware of that my resources might not be limitless, and that maybe I needed to make use of things in another way other than by recycling and using it to support my artwork. Maybe it could become my artwork. At which point I laundered it, and I mean literally laundered it, and sorted it so that you're looking at 20 or 25 caches, strips, and sorted so that you see them by value from the original source. And then I painstakingly sat and meditatively tied ends together to make ends meet. And I've made necklaces today. This is one that's pasted, but I really found that the action of doing this, I'll say, in terms of a craft, was very meditative. So I began crocheting them, and then it led me to realize that if I wanted to wear them, and they became my cash pearl show.
It's a gift that my sister sent to me one Halloween, I think it was last year. And so it's just something that she enjoyed, cheer wine. I didn't ever really had it before, but I did finally have it, it's good. But she sent it to me just as a gift, kind of a memento from home. So I displayed it and I look at it. It has sand and shells in Florida where I'm from. So I can see it and come with it. It's a fun thing. Open it up.
It's not exactly art, not as intricate as the money, but it's just a little bag that I made from a shirt. And I made a few of them. Some of them are little camisoles or bandanas or whatever. But this is the one that I use often.
This is the object that I brought to the museum today. This is a rug that I made out of some old t-shirts. And they're kind of just t-shirts from a lot of different stages of my life. We've got things from as far back as middle school to high school to here at UD. So something that I think is really neat about Maren Hassinger's work is that you look at the exhibit and you pick out different boxes that you have in your own pantry and you really make the connection that way. And so when I was pretty proud of myself when I put this together. And so when I was sharing it with my friends and my family, they look at it and they're like, oh, I see that, like you used to wear that shirt, or I remember when we tied that together, or hey, that's that shirt from high school. So it's just fun to see kind of the new meaning that objects can take as they're upcycled and kind of the meaning that they can still hold.
I brought along these photographs of stained glass. My grandfather not only, he would borrow, do anything, but he also bartered his services. And in one instance, he bartered his services and he came home with a St. Bernard and stained glass windows. And so what the recycling was these stained glass windows were made into panels, and they are now in my living room.
No one owned like a legit soccer ball, like one of those that you see today. These ones were actually made of plastic, and you bought them in the local tiny store in the corner, right? So people would go there and buy these plastic soccer balls. They were pretty cheap actually. But everyone got excited for a new soccer ball. Everyone brought like the plastic ball, and when it was brand new, it had air inside, so it would bounce, and everyone was like, whoa, it bounces, right? So everyone was really excited to use a new one, but it only lasted like a game, because we'll hit like in the corner of a rock, we'll hit like a thorn or something, and it was just pinched, right? So, and then you have a flat soccer ball, and people will still use that one, you know. But when someone got a new one, so they took the old one, they cut it in half, and they put a new one inside and tied the old one around it. That way, it was harder for that one to get flat.
Sheets. It reminds me, in 4th grade, I had an assignment where the whole class had to break up into teams and you had to build a castle. And the teachers didn't tell you what the standards were that they were judging. So we all arbitrarily decided the tallest castle would win. So you built your castle and then you set it up when you went home one day, and then the next morning we were judging. And I remember looking around and not being the tallest castle. So I went home with a box of popsicle sticks and got an old t-shirt, and I ate all the popsicles and cut up all the t-shirts to make flags, and then in the morning I snuck in early and put them on top of my castle, and I won.
My brother and my sister and I trying to make a vending machine from an empty laundry detergent box. It wasn't a good vending machine, but it was fun, you know, trying. But I remember it was huge when I was little, but of course it's big. And
What was the contents of what you were vending?
the little peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and just things around the house.
That's pretty cool.
But it wasn't a good vending machine, but it was fun.
No, I just, I remember I had a shoebox, and I would put like little things, like I remember, I used to like Pokemon cards.
Yes.
Or like bottle caps, I was into those little things, but I don't know what I did with it, this is a long time ago.
And I can say that a portion of recycling is that meditative process of sitting and sorting and figuring out what to do with it, and that nothing should be thrown away. That was inherently part of my childhood training. I remember visiting grandmother, and it was the plastic knives, forks, and spoons that other people discarded that became our pickup sticker game. So it wasn't necessarily store-bought games, but what we could do with building with resources that were there.
So much upcycling, or before it was called upcycling, was done out of necessity. And so you had to make do, you had to make a way out of no way. A lot of times you didn't have time to plan, but the inspiration, you know, was available in droves.
Terry Manor was actually developed by my grandfather, George Wilson, and many of you might recognize the George Wilson Center. George Wilson was known as a demolitionist, a housing developer, and also a politician. He was New York's first and only African-American city councilman. But he really made his mark when he developed housing in New York. And much of the housing that you see along New London Road in Ray Street was built by George Wilson. The reason why he fits into this discussion of upcycling is because he used to demolish buildings and use materials that he found when he demolished buildings to build new buildings. And Terry Manor is an example of a neighborhood where in the 1950s, new workers, African-American workers from Chrysler, GIs on the GI Bill could not find housing because New York was segregated. You couldn't move to Brookside. You couldn't move to some of the other neighborhoods. So he decided he was going to develop housing. Well, he wasn't trained in architecture. He wasn't trained in construction, but he knew how to upcycle or reuse materials. So they, when I say they, he and a group of men from the community who had skills in carpentry, skills in plumbing, got together and they built Terry Manor. The reason why I say that Terry is my object is because it was named for her. The streets, Kenner, is a combination of my dad and my uncle's name, her brothers, Kenneth and Richard. But that whole development is an example of upcycling because so much of the material was actually reclaimed from them.
It wasn't anything that he didn't try to salvage.
whatever demolition project he used everything that he could possibly use.
From the bricks to the copper piping,
Everything.
to the plumbing.
Time, so everything is still standing here.
Yeah.
The ones that haven't been demolished are still standing, and they're in a good shape.
Like I said earlier, it's been an exciting semester for the University Museums. We've made connections between the exhibition and our own lives, and more importantly, we've made connections between the museum and our surrounding community. Thank you to all.
Just cut.